All right, everyone, it's time for the big CARALAGO update. Things proceeding more or less as I expected. I've been predicting for days that there's a very high order of chance, and I think that in the last 24 hours it rose again, that the Uniparty is really using the CARALAGO classified document scandal to attack Biden, lame duck him, get him to resign, at the very least get him not to run in 24 because they don't think he can fucking win, and some of them don't even fucking want him to run because they don't like the bastard, while also attacking Trump. So you can have a situation where Biden says, well, for the benefit of the nation, I'm old, I'm tired, and then, people have lost trust in me. Maybe they'll fiddle with some polls, by the way, hint, hint, that might be coming in the next weeks. So you sundown him, you get him to stand down, and then you rhetorically ask why Trump's not doing the same. It's because he loves America less, or something like that. Begging the question, of course, leading the question. However, I would point out that there is a difference here. We have a tale of two residences. We have the Mar-a-Lago and we have Biden's beach home. At the Mar-a-Lago, you have an extensive visitor's log. You know who's coming and going. Private security takes care of that even above and beyond the Secret Service, of course, which is permanently there because Trump, in his capacity, has been a president. Even years from now, several agents will still be assigned to him. Of course, the detail is shrunk over time for former presidents. That's not the case for VPs. They get a very temporary security presence by the Secret Service. After that, any security that they have is privatized because, of course, they don't have access to the same info that the U.S. president has. Although I'm thinking probably that needs to be changed. In all honesty, there should probably be a couple of agents guarding former VPs who may have met with DOD officials, FBI, etc. Maybe they need a little bit more scrutiny. At the Mar-a-Lago, so you have vast private security, probably hundreds of security officers because Trump is loaded. It's his residence. You've got a bunch of high-powered guests there, people that are willing to pay, 10 grand for a single night. Probably expect a decent, beefy security detail. You have a locked room where all the documents were stored. The documents were knowingly there. They were specifically secured, and that security was in part in coordination with the U.S. government, with the stewardship of Biden. He decides to flip his lid and insinuate there should be a raid right before the raid happens, which is also mysterious. But up until then, Trump was in active communication with U.S. Interests in making sure that the documents were secured. So people went to the Mar-a-Lago. You knew who they were. They weren't allowed access to that location. It was specifically limited. The Secret Service knew the documents were there, presumptively keeping an eye on them at the time. In Biden's home, you have no visitor access logs, which, again, it's not a huge surprise, but it's like, oh, there's apples and oranges. You have no attempt to secure the documents, mainly because, this is the cope, Biden did not know that the documents were there. So if you don't know that they're there, you probably don't see a problem with, hey, maybe I need an extra padlock on the garage that only I can access, and I'll give a copy to the FBI or something just in case. Supposedly, as VP, former VP, he took his homework home with him. The problem being that it wasn't declassified. They're even admitting that there's no evidence that Biden went through that. There's no sort of semi-automatic declassification because he's not the president, he's not the chief executive. They were not properly stored, they weren't even known of, and people came and went without further ado, and all they had to do was talk to the maid at the door, basically. Oh, Hunter, hi, you're here for another small loan from your dad for your crack habit? That's fine. Yeah, he left the money out in the garage for some reason this time. Take the next hour. That appears to be what happened. I speculate, considering how damning this is, like far more damning than the Mar-a-Lago case, because you have actual shenanigans. And everyone who visited Biden's home over those years, by the way, very thankful he doesn't have a visitor's guest book as well, because if you had a J6 committee, you'll remember they leaked the social security numbers and shit of everyone that ever visited the Mar-a-Lago in 2020. So, yeah, there might be some retribution there, but if there's no visitor's log, of course, you're screwed. Why do I get the sense that there's the vague possibility that there's going to be like camera footage or something that they'll try to discern who visited the property during X period of time using. Like maybe, I mean, that's a high rent area, so maybe some neighbor has a porch camera that can, read license plates or something like that. It'd be interesting if one of Biden's neighbors decided to blow the whole thing wide open. Maybe they'd get a check from the Uniparty for doing so. Hint, hint. But it is proceeding as expected. They are attempting to throw Biden under the bus because they just don't like him and because they don't think he can win. They think that if Beijing Biden runs in 24, between the likely upcoming recession, the high inflation, although it has gone linear, that's the good news, by the way. It's only high, it's just not getting higher. You have the student loan debt debacle that he failed to follow through on. You have numerous foreign policy blunders. He's going to be 83 during the campaign, and he's already got problems just getting around. Now, they probably have to dope him up for physical, not just mental reasons. They do not anticipate, especially if he runs against Donald Trump, who will evoke nostalgia, if anything else. Hey, remember how things were before Joey Boy over here, my old buddy, took over? They're expecting Biden would lose. And there would be no way that they could honk him back into the White House. They wouldn't even want him there. He would die in office. He's old. He's decrepit. He does have Alzheimer's disease. He's advancing through dementia. He's ready to go to the OK Corral. He's ready to get to go out to pasture. That's where he belongs. He's an old man. He's not mentally fit. He never should have been in that stewardship role in the first place, and they don't think that he's got what it takes. So what you do is you offer him something. We're not going to prosecute you for these classified things like we intend to do possibly with Donald Trump because we just don't want him back in office because he'll break our toys some more. So we're going to offer you this sweet deal. Well, Joe didn't know that the documents were there. He's agreed to resign, basically. Or he's agreed not to seek re-election. That's the more likely of the two. It's less likely that they'll force him to resign, because what you'll end up with is a very partisan Republican shit show. You probably don't get the votes in the Senate to remove him from office for this, because the Democrats would chuff at voting yes, unless, hint hint, you happen to be dragging Trump at the same time. Wouldn't that be funny? Killing two birds with one stone. It's almost like the Uniparty has planned this in advance. I don't think that they ever wanted a two-term Biden. I think that they didn't give a shit who particularly was the candidate as long as it was someone they could control, and they saw this elderly man who's clearly not fully with it, and they said, well, Joe's run half a dozen times before anyway. Let's give him a thrill. He gets his deluxe brand muffins now, actually, and then we'll throw him under the bus. He gets to be in the annals of U.S. history as having been a president. It'll be sort of like one of those forgettable presidencies, like Benjamin Harrison or somebody like that. But he's still there. His face is still in the book, and that's what matters to him because he's just a blind egotist, and his fucking mind is melting. They don't give a shit about re-electing Biden. Ilhan Omar tossed him under the bus the other day. Now you've got numerous legacy articles talking about the issue. One of them is echoing exactly what I said. Go check RCP if you don't believe me. Is Biden being sunsetted? Yes, of course he is. They're actually attempting to sabotage him at this particular time. It'd be funny if the puppet got mad at his puppet masters and decided to do a tell-all, but I think that he's a little bit too corrupt for that. He's thinking of his family and Hunter's future gubernatorial bid or something like that. I wonder, when Biden does croak, is Ashley Biden going to come out and do a tell-all? That would be interesting. Hunter will probably soil his own dad's name to make crack money. Just to be clear about that trajectory, too. So far, I've been right about everything that's happening here, and it's falling into piece by piece, pretty much on the timeline I would have expected, too. This is evidence in my mind that at the very least there is a plan for shenanigans. Whether they manage to carry it through or not is a different question. There are convolutions behind the scenes, of course, within politics. They make very, very strange, often syphilitic bedfellows. That is their attempt, though. It involves the progressive caucus. They clearly don't like Biden very much. He's not delivering on the things that they need to run for re-election on. At some point, they're going to have to toss him under the bus or get flack from their constituents. They'll get primaried from the far, far left. Ooh, wouldn't that be funny? You'd end up having self-professed Marxists in the Congress or something like that. They don't like him. The big-moneyed interests that have invested in the Uniparty system are worried about getting a return on investment. The lay Democrats, by and large, don't want Biden to run again. And even the Uniparty Republicans barely tolerate him. To be clear, there are other people that they would rather work with, like Hakeem Jeffries or Gavin Newsom, because they're still mentally fresh authoritarians, as opposed to, batshit authoritarians. They prefer them. They want a strong neoliberal uniparty so that we can wage stronger wars and shit like that. Stronger taxes for everyone. This is American progress, according to the neolibs. You watch, they'll continue to badmouth Biden. You've had days and days of nonstop coverage of something inconvenient for an administration that has been covered for in conducting itself in a manner close to literal treason. Did you get nearly this much coverage of the attack on the First Amendment that the Biden admin launched via Twitter and Facebook? No. Did you hear this much about the goddamn Afghanistan withdrawal? A bunch of Americans were held hostage, U.S. Marines were killed, the country was quickly overrun by the Taliban, countermanding everything Biden told the public. You got a couple days of coverage. You've gotten more coverage about supposedly the nothing burger of a handful of documents at Rehoboth Beach than you did about major geopolitical issues. That is a symbol of what is to come. It's as plain as day. That's about all. Peace out.